Welcome to Democracy News Now, the War and Peace Report. U.S. and Iranian negotiators have begun indirect talks in Geneva over Iran's nuclear program. The negotiations come after President Trump ordered what officials describe as the largest U.S. military deployment to the Middle East since the 2003 U.S.-led invasion of Iraq.
Ahead of the talks, the Trump administration imposed new sanctions on 30 individuals accused of facilitating Iran's oil sales and weapons production. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, has claimed Iran has enough fissile material to build a nuclear weapon within days. However, several nuclear experts say Iran's program has not significantly advanced since U.S. and Israeli strikes last June. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, spoke about the renewed negotiations. "We were negotiating last June when Israel attacked us, and then the United States joined that attack. That memory is still fresh for us. The wounds of that aggression are still alive in our minds. We cannot forget that we were negotiating with the U.S. when they decided to attack us." Meanwhile, independent journalist Ida Chavez reports that Democratic lawmakers on the House Foreign Affairs Committee are attempting to block a vote on an Iran War Powers resolution, sponsored by Representatives Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. The resolution would require every member of Congress to go on the record regarding potential U.S. military action against Iran. In other news, 4 Cuban exiles were killed Wednesday during a shootout between Cuban border guards and a Florida-registered speedboat carrying 10 Cuban nationals. According to the Cuban government, the men opened fire when authorities approached the vessel for inspection off Cuba's northeast coast. Border guards returned fire, killing 4. 6 others were injured and remain hospitalized in Cuba. Cuban officials say the group was attempting what they described as an infiltration with terrorist aims. State media reported the men were carrying weapons, Molotov cocktails, bulletproof vests, and camouflage gear. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States would investigate the incident. He was speaking at a gathering of Caribbean leaders, many of whom expressed concern about Cuba's worsening humanitarian crisis amid the U.S. oil blockade, which has severely limited fuel supplies. On Wednesday, 2 Mexican Navy ships departed from Veracruz carrying more than 1,000 tons of humanitarian aid for Cuba. Russian officials say they are discussing possible fuel shipments, and Canada has pledged additional food assistance. We'll have more on this story after headlines with Medea Benjamin, co-founder of Code Pink, who recently returned from Cuba and is organizing a humanitarian solidarity mission next month. Dozens of international aid organizations have issued a final appeal to Israel's Supreme Court to prevent what they describe as a de facto ban on their operations in Gaza and the occupied West Bank, set to take effect in early March. The 37 groups, including Oxfam and Doctors Without Borders, provide more than half of Gaza's food assistance, operate most field hospitals, and run all inpatient treatment centers for children suffering from severe acute malnutrition. The appeal comes amid escalating violence in the occupied West Bank. On Tuesday, Israeli settlers set fire to vehicles and tents in the Palestinian village of Susha. Resident Ahmed al-Nawaja described the attack. "We were shocked when around 30 settlers arrived. They were carrying incendiary materials and burned this tent and that one. They burned the chicken coop. They burned all the furniture. They left nothing." The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has announced it will begin offering passport and consular services to U.S. citizens living in 2 Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, the first time such services have been provided there. The Palestinian Authority condemned the move as a violation of international law. A New York Times review has found that key documents are missing from the Justice Department's release of files related to Jeffrey Epstein. The missing documents reportedly include FBI memos summarizing interviews conducted in 2019 with a woman who accused Donald Trump and Epstein of sexually assaulting her when she was 13 years old in the 1980s. While summaries detailing her accusations against Epstein were released, those concerning Trump were not. In related developments, several high-profile figures have resigned over past associations with Epstein. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers announced he will step down as a Harvard professor at the end of the semester. Former Senator Bob Kerrey resigned from his leadership role at the company Monolith. Nobel laureate Richard Axel stepped down from Columbia University's Neuroscience Institute. The president and CEO of the World Economic Forum also resigned following an investigation into his ties to Epstein. Bill Gates has apologized to staff at his charitable foundation for his association with Epstein and acknowledged meeting him years after Epstein's 2008 conviction. A federal judge has ruled that the Trump administration's policy of deporting immigrants to third countries with which they have no ties is unlawful. U.S. District Judge Brian Murphy wrote that immigrants must receive meaningful notice and an opportunity to object before being deported to a third country. In Buffalo, New York, a disabled Rohingya refugee from Myanmar was found dead after being released by Border Patrol agents and left approximately 5 miles from his home on a winter night. 56-year-old Nuramin Shalom was nearly blind and spoke no English. His family says neither they nor his attorneys were notified of his release. Minnesota Congressmember Ilhan Omar is demanding an investigation into the arrest of her guest at Tuesday's State of the Union address. Aaliyah Rahman was removed and jailed after silently standing during President Trump's speech. She described the incident on Democracy Now! "I was not just removed and arrested. Officers pulled on my shoulders after I told them I have a torn rotator cuff and cartilage tears in both shoulders." Rahman, a U.S. citizen who is autistic, was previously detained last month after federal agents smashed her car window in Minneapolis. She was later released without charges. On Wednesday, the Trump administration announced it is freezing more than $250 million in Medicaid reimbursements to Minnesota, citing a fraud case involving a small number of Somali Americans. Nearly 1.3 million Minnesotans rely on Medicaid coverage. Governor Tim Walz condemned the move, accusing the administration of undermining fraud investigations while punishing vulnerable residents. President Trump's nominee for U.S. Surgeon General Casey Means appeared before the Senate Health Committee, where she declined to directly encourage parents to vaccinate children against measles and influenza. Means, a wellness influencer with a medical degree from Stanford who did not complete her residency, repeatedly said she supports CDC guidance but did not directly answer questions about vaccine efficacy. Meanwhile, the artificial intelligence company Anthropic is reportedly scaling back a core safety pledge as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth pressures the company to provide the Pentagon full access to its AI models. Hegseth has threatened to cancel a $200 million contract and designate Anthropic a supply chain risk if it does not comply. Anthropic has previously warned against the use of AI for mass surveillance and autonomous weapons. And in Brazil, the Supreme Court has sentenced 5 men for plotting the 2018 assassination of Rio de Janeiro City Councilwoman Marielle Franco and her driver Anderson Gomes. Among those convicted are former Congressman Chiquinho Brazão and his brother Domingos. Franco, a black lesbian activist, was known for her outspoken criticism of police violence in Rio's favelas. Her widow, Monica Benicio, welcomed the ruling. Marielle became a symbol because society made her one, because people believe this country can be better. Justice for Marielle is not a slogan. It is a life's work. It is the fight to build a society where people like Marielle and Anderson can live and never be murdered for who they are. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy News Now, the War and Peace Report. Welcome to our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video.